On today's episode of Green Bay Nation, the Packers get set for the playoffs as the number 2 seed in the NFC. We'll look ahead to the rest of the wild card matchups. And what reason is there for optimism and concern for Green Bay heading into the postseason? Plus, how tough will the path be for the Pack as they try and finish their season in Miami? We'll discuss all that and more coming up next on Green Bay Nation. Welcome to Green Bay Nation. Lily Zhao here, and it is the end of the regular season. And joining me to chat about the Green Bay Packers, editor and writer for Packer Report and creator of the Pack-A-Day podcast, Andy Herman on my left, and radio host on 107.5 and 1400, the fan Marcus Eversole on my other left, I guess. Well, guys, exactly. It's kind of crazy to say. It's the end of the regular season, and when all is said and done, the Green Bay Packers finished the year under Matt LaFleur in his first year as head coach, 13-3. They take the NFC North crown, and they're the number 2 seed in the NFC playoff picture. First of all, what a season. And
Absolutely.
Second of all, they were just about an inch and a half, 2 inches away from being the top overall seed. It's been a crazy first year under LaFleur, hasn't it?
It absolutely has, and you just can't help but think back to where they were exactly a year ago. Back-to-back seasons where they fall short of the playoffs. They're in the midst of a coaching search. I mean, Joe Philbin just finished up as the interim head coach. And I think one thing that needs to be pointed out again and again is the role of general manager Brian Gutekunst. Just all the talent he brought in, from the Smiths to Adrian Amos, a stud left guard in the draft in Elton Jenkins, a starter at free safety in Darnell Savage. Matt LaFleur has been great, but I can't help but think, what would LaFleur have done had the roster looked like it did a year ago? And Brian Gutekunst gave him a brand new roster with a ton of talent. They're 13-3. It's crazy.
You touched on so much that I have to remember to respond to all of it because there was so much good stuff there. So first of all, Brian Gutekunst, not only the big moves that I think everyone knows about, the Smiths and Adrian Amos, but the little moves. Alan Lazard poached from the Jaguars practice squad a season ago. Jared Valdir picked up midway through the season, plays big minutes last game. And if it had that been Alex Light, I'm not sure Green Bay wins that game. That's a major move. Tyler Ervin completely re-energizes this return game. So it's not only the big splash moves, but it's those little moves as well. And you go back just a season ago, that Detroit Lions game. And, you know, they're not in that game. It's a 35-0, something like that. Lions blowout in Lambeau in the midst of a coaching search. 1 year later to get their 13th win, get the bye. They have 13 wins this season. They had 13 in the last 2 seasons combined. So absolutely crazy turnaround. And I'm with you, Marcus. Brian Gutekunst deserves a ton of the credit for that.
Dropping some great knowledge from these two. Love it. And yes, very true. He's done a phenomenal job of the year. Executive of the year.
Yeah,
I think so.
In my mind opinion.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, Matt LaFleur said they would treat Week 17, the Lions game, like a playoff game, but let's hope that's not how they come out in the actual playoffs on January 12th at Lambeau, because this team won ugly yet again. I mean, they overcame a 14-0 deficit on the road to the Lions, a team they should have beaten by a lot more than they did. Mason Crosby makes his second game-winning field goal against Detroit to seal their 23-20 victory, and I know we talked about it last week, but I don't think a lot of people predicted the Packers kind of coming out and struggling as much as they did in Week 17.
I feel like we see this all the time in sports, right? Where you have a good team playing against a not-so-good team. And all week, the good team is asked, how do you not overlook them, you know? And, of course, the team's always going to say, we treat every game the same. We can't overlook anybody. Well, you don't get brownie points for saying the right thing. And when the ball is kicked off, you better come to play. And at the start of the game, the Packers did not come to play. I felt like the drop by Jimmy Graham kind of set the tone. They just never seemed to find their footing. Offense, defense, it was all out of whack. I give the Packers credit, though, because they're down 17-3 at half, and midway through the third quarter, they realized, you know, you can't score 14 points on one play. They didn't just abandon the game plan. It was little by little, and they almost trusted that we are the better football team. If we play our game, we will beat them in the second half, and that's what they did.
And it was a weird juxtaposition because you get down by those 14 points, and I think your immediate reaction is to try to get some of those chunk plays or those explosive plays. And it was really taking some of the easy stuff and taking some of the underneath stuff that they weren't doing in the first half. They were going for so many of those long plays, and none of it really seemed quite in rhythm. They made the adjustment. They got Aaron Rodgers with a little bit of rhythm, and they were able to go away and find a way to win that game. They've been good for basically one half of the entire game so far, or of every game, one half, and if that one half is better than the other team's one half, they've won 13 out of the 16 times. And it's odd to say, but that's kind of what it's been so far.
Yeah, they've just find ways to win. It's crazy to say. Well, you know, the reason they were down 17-3 was because their offense was struggling mightily. You know, Aaron Rodgers really had a first half to forget. He said after the game he missed a couple throws, and let's be honest, he overthrew a couple guys that could have had some touchdowns in this game. So I know there has been drops. He's been missing throws thus far. What gives with Rodgers thus far this season?
I don't know. I know it's always been really hard to criticize Aaron Rodgers because he's great, and there's no denying that. You always judge players on a curve, so what's bad for Aaron Rodgers might be really good for some other players. Threw for 4,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, 4 picks. It's a pretty solid year, but it's a fair enough sample size through this season and even the last couple years. He has not looked like the Aaron Rodgers that we've known over the the entirety of his career. He is not playing well. He did not play well in Detroit at all. He made just enough plays for them to win at the end. Now, bad news, I guess. Maybe at this point he's not capable of putting the team on his back and just taking them to a win. The good news, finally, the Packers are finding other ways to win, not relying on Aaron Rodgers' right arm.
Yeah, and I think that's a big piece of it. This is not just a this year sort of thing, and I think that's one of the big things is you go back to last year and some of the question marks were, well, he wasn't healthy, or he was playing maybe under a stale offense was the theory. Maybe he didn't have the offensive line. They addressed the offensive line. They got a new offensive coordinator, offensive coach in Matt LaFleur, and they basically went out and Aaron Rodgers had almost the exact same identical season as he did a season ago. You look at completions, attempts, percentage, yards, touchdowns, interceptions, yards per attempt, yards per completion, rating, QBR, all of it almost identical to a season ago. So at some point, this just is Aaron Rodgers. There's a couple question marks left. Could you maybe get him a couple more playmakers? And maybe could you try something a little bit different? Maybe he needs just a little bit more time in the system. Those are maybe the couple remaining questions, but at some point, this just is what it is.
Right, and maybe under year 2 under Matt LaFleur it gets better, and if they can add some more offensive weapons, that'll obviously help him down the line as well. All right, we have a lot more to get to on Green Bay Nation. Next, we'll take a deeper look into that NFC playoff picture. Keep it here.